Welcome to Rallen's Rant.
Today I'm joined by Greg McWilliams, who is the current Director of Rugby in Yale University, while he also just came off the back of a November series with the United States as their backs coach. So I do my usual introduction and then I follow it up with a question, which is normally how are things. So I might as well stick to that. So Greg, how are you today?
Yeah, doing great, Richie. Thanks a million for having me on your show. Feeling good, just back from Georgia late last night. So back in the office this morning, trying to get on top of things here.
So feeling fresh, no doubt.
Oh, yeah. Not really, but feeling okay. I'm feeling okay. It's good. It's good to have this chance of a chat.
Perfect. Okay, well, to kick it all off, I want to start off with your memories as a child. So, what was growing up as Greg McWilliams as, a 6, 7, 8-year-old like?
Oh, pretty complicated. I'd say back then. I was very lucky to get educated in St. Michaels from a young age, all the way through my junior school and senior school. And I think I went into school every day just looking forward to seeing the guys and having some fun. Certainly the classroom was secondary in terms of importance. But I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better upbringing. I had a very good experience in Michaels. My 2 older brothers were in Michaels before me, and we all went up through the school, and we had some great memories.
Sweet. And what do you remember most? Say when you progress into senior school, and you feel like probably a small fish in a massive pond at stages. And I'm just saying, what do you remember most about your senior school days, whether it was in school or outside school? Like, is there any kind of funny stories that stand out for you?
Oh God, you're putting me on the spot here. I think when I look back now at my time in Michaels, it's definitely the friendships that you've made. So even now, I'm in a WhatsApp group with the exact same group of guys I was friendly with in Michaels. And we still talk the exact same way. It's bizarre. Here we are, 20 years past graduation, and we're still sharing the exact same immature humor. But I think that's the biggest thing, was just the sense of community that I had. And I suppose from being in the school, it made me want to stay around the school after I'd graduated, coaching rugby as an 18, 19-year-old when I was up in UCD, and then eventually going into teaching there and coaching there. So I think the fact that I stayed in Michaels long past my sell-by date as a student kind of proved just how much the school meant to me, and how much I was willing to, stay there. I loved it, and it was the environment that I was most comfortable in.
Okay, and you touched on it there that you went into teaching in St. Michaels. Was that the plan when you were in 5th and 6th year? Or was that just more of a, you were going through college and then you thought, hang on, might as well stay in the school that I love, try to do a bit of coaching as well? Or was it, in other words, was it planned or was it not planned for you to become a teacher?
It was not planned at all. I felt that when I left Michaels, as great as it was, and I did have a great time there, so I was never going to go back into teaching or coaching there. My first year out of school, I started coaching the under-14s as a student job, which so many people do. And straight away, I just loved it. I loved having the chance to coach and to educate. And the more I got into rugby coaching, the less I was interested in playing, and the more I was interested in staying coaching for a long period of time. And here I am 21 years out of the school. I graduated in 1996, and I'm still coaching, and I'm still, I suppose, coaching in a style that I would have learned through my time at Michaels. So I never would have expected going back to the classroom. And it was a mentor of mine, Noel Turley, who was a very dear friend to myself, my wife, Sarah. Well, I remember it so clearly. I remember going to him in the staff room. I was working in Michaels, assisting him as games master and coaching in the school. I think I was coaching the senior maybe panel 2 at the time. And I said to him, look, I really want to get into coaching full time. I was looking for this, bit of guidance, hoping to direct me in the rugby world. And he said, well, if you want to be a rugby coach, the first thing you have to do is go back to the classroom and become a teacher. I wasn't expecting those words, but they were absolutely the right words. So I went back and I did my H-dip in Trinity, and then went back to the classroom, and I became a school teacher. And while I was teaching in the classroom, I was also coaching in St. Michaels, whether it was starting out with the under-13s, coaching with the JCT or with the SCT. I stayed coaching and teaching there until eventually I left, and I went to America, where I'm currently sitting at a desk talking to you over the phone.
And I suppose, just to kind of sum up what you've just said there in the last minute or two, what were kind of the standouts or the highlights of the first few years for you as a coach, or even some of the lows as well? Like, those first 3 or 4 years when you're kind of a novice, but then having said that, you kind of learning your trade and working yourself up.
The back kitchen was a lasting memory I have. I think we refer to it now as the black hole, which is, you're finished coaching in Michaels and you go down to get a cup of coffee and you realize it's not 4:30 anymore, it's 7 o'clock, and you're still there, and you're realizing, geez, I better leave here and go and do something else with my life. And that is a lasting memory. Was, just, there's a group of coaches there that I got on really well with on a personal level. We played a lot of golf outside of coaching. You go on a lot of rugby tours. You have a good social life, and it was just feeling comfortable. I really enjoyed it. I mean, Dave Wilson would have been coaching around the same time, and Porter Bennett and Chris O'Connor, Jeff Dre and Eamon O'Riordan. I mean, look, you can name so many people who were around at that time, but yeah, I think we all thought about the game in a very similar way, and we challenged each other, and we had a lot of fun. And that would be the lasting memory. And then I suppose getting the opportunity to be involved in the JCT in 2002, the year we won the cup, that would have been pretty important, because it opened my eyes to obviously succeeding with a really good management group and a playing group. And you began to realize, things that worked well, and maybe things that you could add, or things that you had to work on for the following year. And it got to the point then where I was very lucky to be the the SET coach in 2007. And that was actually a difficult time, because I took over the SET when there was a coaching staff that were in place, and I took over from them. And that was a challenging time for me personally, but from there you just concentrate on the coaching and getting good people around you. And I think that's certainly my lasting memory, is just working with really good coaches and trying to challenge each other and try to just create a really good environment for the player. And I think being away and looking back into Michaels now and just seeing how they're doing is it's really exciting. And it's testament, I think, to the coaches that were there before me, and also to the coaches who were there after. I mean, there's some brilliant young coaches there at the moment, and long may it continue.
No, I agree, and well said. And I'd say the last thing, just touching on schools rugby and the experiences you had, just to touch on that Senior Cup win, the first Senior Cup win in obviously the school's history. Was there any kind of pivotal moment where, you felt that, this actually could be the year Michaels finally actually win a cup? Or was it very much a thing of just take it week by week, month by month, and then just work your way to that first cup game, try win that, and then focus on it? Or was there actually an anticipation in December, in January, that this squad was actually going to be a cup winning squad?
So as a young Michaels boy, 6, 7 years of age, I used to go up to the cup matches, and every year I thought we'd win the cup. When you're in that school, it's so important. So yeah. I was always confident in the players that we had, even at a young age, that they were good enough to win a cup. And that year, they're already very well coached, and they had a good skill set. And actually bringing in an outside help, we brought in Mark McDermott that year, who was a Blackrock College student, and at the time he was coaching the Irish under 20s. And I suppose the attitude to winning success in Blackrock then was very different. So he came in with a mindset that I felt was really valuable, and he had a massive part to play in that win. I mean, I think back to our last match before the Cup. We lost to Gonzaga up in Gonzaga, which is tough to take at any time as a Michaels fella. But, that was our last match before he went into a Cup campaign. And I think we had a meeting either the day or two after, and Mark led the meeting. And I just remember during that meeting, the way he spoke and the way the players reacted, I felt that there was just a bit between the teeth going into the Cup campaign. And then, like anything, it's about getting momentum and holding momentum. And I think we got a good positive momentum going into that Cup year. And as a school, I think back to the team of 1991 even that my brother was on. They lost to Clongowes in the final. I think of the year in 88 as well. They just needed a win. The school just needed to win. And I think getting that win was the most important thing from a rugby playing perspective, because all of a sudden you're hoping that a first year student coming into the school sees winning, knows what it's like, and will make winning in the future easier, if that makes any sense. So getting the first win for me was always a really important thing. And I think once we got that first win, well, then players were much more comfortable in winning. And I think Mark McDermott had a huge part to play in that. And the further away I get from the event, which is, 10 years ago, over 10 years ago now, the more I realized just how much of an impact he had on me as a coach as well. I think we always had a good way of doing things in Michaels, but that outside influence and that bit of hardness and that mental resolve is something that he brought to that team. I think we had to really touch on that in order to get over the finishing line. And once we got over the finishing line, well then, it just made it easier from then on in for teams to have both that mental hardness, knowing what it was like to win, but also then develop the game and to the point now where I think we're always from year to year in with a fighting chance, because we've got a competitive group who are ready to compete in the cup competitions.
No, that's completely well put, and it only takes a quick glance at what happened in the 10 years after that to see how kind of how kind of expected it was for JCT and SCT teams to do really well and be successful.
Just winning, just winning. I mean, if we had a win any year before 2007, it would have been a lot easier. It's just to get that first win was so important for so many people. I mean, look at Noel Turley, who I mentioned before, and Paul Barr, Gary Coakley, and Frank Mackin. I mean, they slaved for years and years and years and put in so much effort, and they just fell short. But to get over the finishing line, even though, as I said to you before, it was a tough year from a personal level, getting over the finishing line it was just so important. And hopefully, now the coaches can just add to that. And I think we're seeing Emmett McMahon, who's coaching the SET this year, and Andrew Skean, who's leading rugby there, Michaels, over the last number of years. And, Shabzy, who's coaching the JCT, and Nags has been there, and Ronan Joyce. I mean, they're great coaches who've taken the program further. And that's always your hope when you leave a position, is that you can look at it and it's better than it was when you were there. And there's no doubt that it is. And that's a really, as I said to you earlier on, it's a really great thing to see that. And there's nothing better than following the team from over here and just seeing them winning a lot. It's nice to see.
I was actually about to do a Ronan Joyce impression there, but I thought otherwise.
Always welcome. Always welcome.
Yeah. But to kind of move on from the school side of things, another big moment for you as a coach, I'm sure, was when you went in to coach the Irish women's side in 2009, and you were there for about 4 or 5 years, and you achieved some pretty big things in there. And I'm just wondering what it was like, because probably at the time, the women's side wasn't as developed, it wasn't as popular as it probably is now. The media probably weren't taken as serious as they are now. And like, what was that like to kind of step into when you're usually coaching school players or else players just out of school to completely going into a different environment with, an up and coming sport in a female side of things?
It was a real eye opener. I remember the first time I met the group was down in Navan, and it was in December. And I remember the pitch was frozen, so we couldn't train on it. And that was the first time that I had it. Yeah, I remember it was the first time I had a chance to see the players. I came on board as the skills coach to begin with. Kevin West brought me on board, and straight away there were definitely a group of players who I thought had potential. And when Kevin West left and Philip Doyle came back in as head coach, and then I came on board as the backs and did a little bit of attack, they just grew from strength to strength. We had a really good conditioning coach who put big emphasis on what the players could do when we weren't in camp. At the time, we were still very much underfunded, so our lead-in time to competition was very short. We got to 2012 and we played England away in Esher, or in Esher as it's pronounced, I think. And at that stage, we had a chance to actually win the championship, and we played England in our last day, and we were level at half, or maybe just 3 points behind. In the second half, they just blew us off the park, and we lost the game pretty heavily. I think we learned a lot from that moment going into 2013. I think if ever you look at the Six Nations, whenever you have France and England at home, that's always a year that you can target. In 2013, we had France and England at home, and we had Wales away, Scotland away, and Italy away in the last match. So we targeted that year, and we got the bit between the teeth. But certainly early on when I was coaching the Irish women's side, people I sense were like, "Oh, you're coaching the women's side," and whether they respected it or not, I'm not too sure. But certainly after 2013, when we won the Grand Slam, I think the respect levels definitely increased. And then going into France, I actually stopped after the 2013 Grand Slam because I was doing quite a lot of coaching outside of Michaels as well, with club and with the Leinster 19s, and I had a wife, Sarah, who you don't get a chance to spend a huge amount of time, particularly as a rugby coach, and something that you're probably experiencing yourself at the moment when you're trying to coach and get better. I mean, you have very little social life. You miss christenings, and you miss birthdays, and you miss friends' parties, and it
I
can
don't
be
have
quite
a
tough.
wife though.
So, but you will, you'll yeah. But you'll hopefully will someday if somebody's willing to put up with you. But I think certainly after 2013, I decided that I wasn't going to go into the 2014 Six Nations Championship, and I didn't. And then after that championship, I was asked would I be willing to coach with that team again leading into the World Cup in 2014, and I was really happy I had the opportunity to do it again, because I felt we had a bit of unfinished business. And going into Marcoussis in France, the players just put in so much effort. I thought there's good understanding between the players and the coaches, and we had a pretty clear menu of how we want to attack and defend, and the players were at the right age in terms of their maturity to go into the World Cup and do something special, and they did. So it was a nice way to end that 5-year stretch, beating New Zealand in the World Cup, and we were awful in the semi-final against England. It's always my one regret. We were just awful. And I always think there's some things I could have changed at half time, and I didn't. I mean, Joe Schmidt and Les Kiss came on board with the Irish women's side and helped out a huge amount. And I remember after the pool stages, I jumped on a plane and I went back to Carton House where the men's team were training, and Joe Schmidt, gave some great advice on the attack and on England's defence. And we thought we implemented the changes well. But I look back at that match now, I should have changed some things at halftime, and I didn't. And I suppose you just have to learn from that. And then we went into a third and fourth place playoff against France, and it was a cracking game. I mean, full house. The French really got behind their women's side. I mean, there could have been 15, 20,000 people at that match, and we came on the wrong side of it. So it was a bit of a damp squid at the end of a great tournament. But still, that playing group, I felt were in a really good position to kick on. And certainly this summer, looking back on how the World Cup finished for them, I mean, there was blaming of the coach, there was blaming of the players, but when you're competing as a team, there's so many different variables that go into it. And it just was one of those competitions that just didn't work out for them this year. And hopefully the IRFU and the playing staff and the management staff can be in a stronger position afterwards if they do a proper, a proper statement of accounts of the competition. And I just wish the team well moving forward, because it was hard watching them, and particularly towards the end of that tournament this year. But yeah, so coaching that side, I had to do it. I'd been in Michaels as a student and as a teacher from a young age, and just to go outside that environment and to coach a different group of players was really important to me. And it's why, I went and coached in Blackrock Rugby Club, which again, Noel Turley suggested I should do. He thought it'd be just, I was SCT head coach at the time, and he goes, "Why don't you do this? I think it'd be," we both felt that it'd be just great for somebody from Michaels to coach in Blackrock Club and kind of show that, we're above maybe the perception that's out there. And I went down to Blackrock for 5 years as well, and I had a terrific time. And I felt that Blackrock influence as well was important. It was certainly important for 2007. Remember, I started coaching Blackrock in 2005. So having a chance in 2007 to coach players who had won multiple cups was very, very, I thought, very beneficial.
Yeah. Well, no, that's definitely an interesting point, talking about the mindsets, and you can apply that to pretty much anything really. But no, it's definitely interesting, seeing as back in the mid 2000s, it was all Blackrock, before obviously Michaels kind of turned up late to the party. Moving forward on is, next on the list anyway, is you now find yourself in the States, in Yale. And, my question to you really is, what made you, move over to the United States and leave, not so much all the work you've done, but just leave, as you said, your comfort zone in Dublin and, take up the role as a Yale Director of Rugby?
When the opportunity came to go across to Yale, it was one that myself and my wife looked at and thought it was a great chance for us on a number of levels. Obviously, professionally was one of them, but also on a personal level, just to experience a different way of doing the same thing. And I'm here now, just starting my 4th year, and I must say it's been such an incredible learning experience, and having the opportunity to meet so many kids from different environments and an alumni group who have so much to offer. I mean, the amount that they've guided me off the field in terms of best practice, and how to actually control more the business side of a rugby program has been really eye-opening. And they've no problem ringing up and letting you know if things aren't done well enough and what needs to be improved. And I need that. I think everybody needs to be kept on their toes. So, Yale Rugby, and I suppose I can go into a bit of the Yale history now without boring you, but Yale Rugby started in 1875. So it's been played for, over 140 years. And Walter Camp was the Yale Rugby captain, who eventually founded American football in 1906. And George W. Bush played for Yale. And there's so much history within the sport. So to have the opportunity to come to an educational institution like Yale and a chance to build a rugby program was a dream for me. Because I always think that professionalism is Monday morning. It's like how you get out of bed and how you control your week. It's not necessarily the environment you're in. Because going, for me, certainly from being in St. Michael's and to go into a professional environment was very, very difficult. And if I was going to go into one, it would have been, a lower league in England or somewhere. And I came over to Yale, and it was very, very tough at the start. I remember I was here for, maybe I was 3 weeks into being here, and I remember being behind the post and pretty much being in tears, ringing Sarah up, telling her to pack the apartment that we were going home. And in fairness to Sarah, she told me just pretty much to harden up. And she gave me some great advice in the following weeks. And now, we're really proud of where we are as a program, but we're still at such an early stage, and there's so much more improving that we have to do. It's really exciting. It's very similar to Michael's in certain ways, and the idea is that in a couple of years to come that we'll be really competitive as a program, but that takes time. But yeah, I've loved it. I really have.
Nice. And is there any kind of, like, I know you kind of mentioned that there was a few kind of those tough times early on, but like what kind of stood out for you in the first few months as like just a complete culture shock, whether it was on or off the pitch, whether it's work related or not work related? Like, was there something that once you arrived, you were like, Jesus, I was not expecting this at all, and it took everything. Like, there was no office. They weren't allowed in the gym. We had no physiotherapists or trainers. Our balls were different shapes. We had a couple of rugby balls that were in the shape of a soccer ball. I don't know how that was possible. Somebody blew it up an awful lot. Yeah. Our jerseys were, a little bit old and kind of a couple. It was just, we'd no changing rooms. You get changed on the side of a field. The grass was long. We struggled to have 15 players. It really was a big culture shock, but straight away the students were terrific. The alumni were incredibly helpful, and everybody just wanted to improve. So I think as hard as some of the early building blocks were, you had a group that were willing to stick the toes in and get to work. And certainly that's been the real benefit. I'm calling now, or we're talking to each other from my office, where myself and the women's head coach and my assistant coach is just across the way from me. And we're in the varsity gym where all the other teams are. We're in the medical room with all the other teams. We're a lot tighter in how we present ourselves around the campus, and I think we've worked very hard to get to this point. But still, for where I see the program going, and where the players, more importantly, now see the program going, I think we all realize that we have a lot of work to do, and it means that we go into different stages of the year. So now we're finished our fall season, which ended well for us, thank God, and now we go into a 4-month winter, I suppose, period where we don't have a huge amount of competition before next spring. So our guys go from being out in the field and doing like a lot of conditioning and competitive weights. Now we go into off-season strength work where you can afford to do heavier weights and less conditioning. So we're going into that stage now where you're hoping the players can get stronger and physically in better shape to perform when it comes to our spring season, which starts with a tour to Hong Kong and Japan in March. So the whole thing has been eye-opening, and it's certainly, I've had to improve an awful lot as a coach, and I've had to change the way that I've coached in order to suit the playing group, and that's been the greatest challenge. And yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, it's been great. Could you, I feel like I'm putting you on the spot here, but could you give us maybe an example of, say, one thing you've had to change in relation to your coaching, that, say, you just had to change in relation to, it was accepted in Ireland, or else it worked in Ireland, but it didn't work in USA?
So I look back on how I coached even in Ireland, even when things were going well, and some of the things I did, I look at and I nearly shudder when I think about it. I think the most important thing is just to be bluntly honest with players, particularly about where they stand and what they need to improve on and what they need to work on. And I think that's something that I've had to become much better at. And I think then your approach to coaching, even though some of the players have limited experience at Yale coaching, I think it's really important at the same time that you guide players a lot more than prescribe to players. So at Yale, I think one of our strong points is our ability to think. We've got some very, very smart players, so it'd be remiss of me to not use that as our main strength. So we have leadership groups within our team, and those leadership groups, present to the rest of the players on certain areas, be it the scrum or the line out or our attacking shape or our defensive structures. I would meet with the leaders during the week with the assistant coaching staff, and we'd have a very clear plan. And then they would be the ones who would present to the players. That's something that I didn't do enough of when I was in Michaels, and something that I think I've learned now is the absolute importance of having players who are controlling the environment, and you're there to support that. So, just being away with the USA national side, which was a terrific experience. Yeah. It's the same principle, is players that are there. It's so important that they're the ones who are leading how they're looking to play and how they're looking to think and their standards. And you're there as a coach to drive that. And at times you step in and you might have to be quite firm in how you're looking to guide because they've gone off course. And other times, you just let them do what they're comfortable doing, and you're there just to make sure that you're promoting that as often as you can. So if you take your week now, I think for my time at Yale, it's really afforded me the opportunity to be better at identifying a group, and then what coaching style suits that group, because I also do some consultancy work with a company here called Adivus, which looks after USA Rugby Academy, and I do the curriculum for that. And I get the opportunity to travel around the country, which is terrific. But you go into certain environments and you need to be quite prescriptive as a coach, and you go into other environments where you need to guide more and just challenge and play. So I think it's allowed me the opportunity to, I suppose, watch first and speak second, as opposed to speaking first and then watching second. And that would be, certainly my approach as a coach now is I'd like to think that I coach more through, things like adaptive games, and you're just questioning your players about their actions and trying to challenge them and putting together I suppose essentially you're painting pictures for your players and scenarios that they can problem solve around. And that's been really good fun. I've really enjoyed that side of it now. It's something that I'm still trying to get better at, and it's something that I work on pretty much most days. I'm trying to improve that side of my coaching, because I think that's what a player needs now is a real challenge, and it needs to be fun, and it needs to be pretty intense for them to be engaged. So that's my biggest challenge, I think, with Yale or with USA, is the ability to hit the target market, if you will, and make sure that you're coaching the way that they should be coached.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I don't know if I get it. I think sometimes I find myself waffling. No. They say but they do say to be a good coach, you need to be a good salesman. So I don't know whether I'm just selling you what I'm doing, but certainly for me, it's how I'd like to think I'm coaching at the moment. Is it's a lot more player based, and it's a lot less about me. I mean, as you mentioned, I had the opportunity, just got back there from being away in the November series with USA Eagles, which is a massive honor for me. Monday and Tuesday, I'd be talking quite a lot, but by Thursday, Friday, I'd be saying nothing really, and just making sure that you're creating what needs to be done for the players, and they're the ones who drive it. Particularly the Thursday, the Friday into the game on the Saturday. By Saturday, you're pretty much just in the background, just watching, and that's something that I've had to work on, but it's something that I think I'm getting better at, but there's always room for improvement.
Keep hearing about Eddie Jones saying he wants to be his job, and he wants it to be redundant by the World Cup, and he wants pretty much all the players to be in charge of things, both on and off the pitch. So it definitely is it's a reoccurring theme with some of these top coaches that, less is often more in their case. So, if you educate the players enough to be able to react to these situations, that your job, as you said, it becomes very easy, and you just let them do their thing. So no, I definitely see where you're coming from with that. And just so we're tipping the iceberg. I feel like we've been teasing the whole, the last 5, 7, 8 weeks for you probably have been very exciting times, and I just want to start off with the little things you did with Robbie Deans and the Barbarians. Obviously Robbie has ties with Yale. I think it's his daughter who goes there, isn't it?
Yeah, his daughter Sophie it was quite a funny story about how I got to meet Robbie originally. A Yale kid came up to me, a freshman who ironically is now the captain of the club. He's a senior. He said, "Hey, coach, there's a parent coming
Did he
over."
call you coach?
No
Did he call
idea.
you coach?
He goes, "That's what you're called in America, is coach." You just get, because at the start I was real. There's certain parts of me at the start you think you're going to bring in a way of doing things, but then there's certain ways that they do it in America that you just have to run with. So yeah, the term coach is used quite a lot. But he came up, he's like, "Hey, coach, look, this is going to be really weird, but there's a parent coming over and he wants to watch a couple of rugby sessions. Like, I know it's completely ridiculous, but do you mind?" I was like, "Of course not. All the more the merrier. Give him my email address and just tell him to reach out. I'm happy to talk to him and we can grab a coffee." And next, this email comes in from Robbie Deans, Panasonic Knights. Like, "Hey, Coach McWilliams, I'm over visiting Yale, visiting my daughter. Do you mind if I come and watch training?" I was like, "Well, firstly, you're going to be doing more than watching. And secondly, I'm pretty much going to be the world's biggest pothole on you for the next 2 weeks while you're here." So he came over the first year and we hit it off straight away. We had a lot of opportunities to grab coffee and just talk about the game. And we shared some, mutual friends within the game. And he came out and coached the Yale team, and we just got on really well. And we developed a strong relationship from that moment over the course of the last sort of 3 years. And then when the opportunity came to go with the Barbarians, I was meant to start in Japan and then go from there to Australia, over to the UK and Ireland, which would have been amazing. But once I got asked to be the attack and backs coach with the USA, that really was my priority. So I was very lucky that Yale allowed me to leave a week early and go to the Barbarians for a week. So I met up with them in Limerick, and I was there for the week leading into the Tonga match. And then the next day, I traveled from there out to meet up with the USA in Germany. So, the experience of watching Robbie coach and Scott Robinson, he's the Crusaders head coach, and just being around them for the week and the players, just seeing how they drive an environment was really impressive. And it certainly, for me, it was an eye opener. And you're trying to improve your education, but just seeing how they facilitated for the players was it was just brilliant. And I went in there thinking I was going to be a fly in the wall. So the very first meeting I was at, I went to the back of the room and I was trying not to be in the way. And straight away, Robbie just, fingers me out, and I had to say a few words. And then the players just made me feel really welcome. And I suppose I got stuck in wherever I was needed to help out and assist. I did. And it was just a huge honor, I must say, just to be around that group of players. I mean, you think of the likes of Andy Ellis, the scrum half. I mean, when he spoke and the way he went about his business, coming on board, he's going to be a terrific coach down the line. He's such a clear way of communicating with the players. And Scott Robinson was just so much banter and fun.
Did he get his dance moves out at
all?
We
were well. Not that I can say over the radio.
Fair enough.
But they come in. The great thing about the Barbarians is that true way that that's why Robbie, I think, likes it so much. It's that old school style where guys come together, they play a great sport. While they're in an area, they go around to all the schools and all the clubs, and they spread the word, and they play a style of rugby that hopefully is attractive, and it creates fun and excitement. And then they enjoy themselves. Particularly at the start of the week, they would have had a bit of fun, but certainly they had a day off on the Wednesday, and after that, it was. I must say, everybody then began to concentrate in the game, and it got a bit more serious. But and then from there, going into the Germany and Georgia games, it was such a great experience. I'm back here now, and I'm excited to do a bit of work here at Yale and try and get better and try and make our program better. And I get a lot of learnings from the whole trip that hopefully I can use here.
Well, yeah, no, I've always been a big fan of the Barbarians, and the fluid
Oh
nature
yeah,
of their rugby. And to be fair, they came in with some very strong performances as well. Because I remember reading last year.
yeah. It's funny. Like the weather in Thomond was so poor, and I remember, certainly something that I would have taken down and noted was before we left to go to the field, we had a team meeting, and in the team meeting, um, it was just very well done by Robbie and Scott. They were asking leading questions about what they're going to face, what they need to do in certain situations as a result of the horrendous weather. I mean, the weather was so bad, it really affected the crowd. But it's funny, I mean, the Barbarians win the game against Tonga and they scored two mauls. I mean, normally, you associate the Barbarians with throwing the ball around, but at the same time, that would have just been stupid. Playing in those conditions, you have to be smart as well. And I thought that in the second half, when we came out, we're a lot smarter of how we use the ball and the conditions. And it's really important for the Barbarian name
Yeah,
that they
no, I
win.
agree.
Because you want to be known as a a world invitational team that is associated with winning. So I think it was really important that they beat Tonga. They couldn't have lost that match. So reducing how we played in the second half was the right thing to do. And luckily enough, the team came away with the win. And it was just a great experience.
No doubt. I'm jealous. But
I'm living the dream, Richie, honestly. I still feel that somebody's going to tap me on the shoulder and say, "Hey, you're bluffing. Come on, here's the way out. You can go out through the back door." Like even when you're away with the national team in USA, I'm still waiting for somebody to tap me on the shoulder and say, "Mate, seriously, come on, out of here."
What do you do there?
Like, you're still waiting for that because, for like certainly in my situation, you have a dream as a coach, but you can't go down the conventional route because I was lucky I played Irish colleges and I played AIL, but I certainly wasn't good enough to play provincial rugby or to play for Leinster. I wasn't very fast. That was always my issue. So I think you go down the education route, you try to get into coaching, you try to coach the highest level you can. You still have to. I still can't believe like they've had the opportunity to coach, an international women's team and an international men's team. That's something that I don't take for granted at all. I'm very, very lucky.
No, I agree again, and I'd say the last thing I need to touch on is we've kind of yet again flirted with it a bit. Is your recent work with USA in those 2 November tests, and I just want to ask basically, how was it as an experience, and what was the biggest change or culture shock for you from going from coaching club rugby, coaching women's international to finally being a part of a setup where it's it's the pinnacle, it's international rugby, it's test matches. Like how was the whole experience?
So I'm just doing the reviews at the moment, and in doing the reviews, I always write down notations myself about. So I keep a diary most days that I fill out at the end of a day, and I just try and there's things that I want to work on. And I'm just looking back over it now, and I mean, it was a great experience. We started in Germany. We had very little lead-in time. I'm not sure if you're aware, but our home union, being USA Rugby, off field is struggling a little bit financially. So as a result, we mightn't get a lot of time with our players before matches. So we had a week before we played Germany, and Germany are this upcoming team who are beating teams pretty convincingly. So I was worried about that game, and we managed to win that pretty well. We won 47-17, I think was the scoreline. I could be wrong, or off by a point or two. And then we went into Georgia away into Tbilisi, which we knew was going to be a very, very tough test. Georgia had come to USA in the summer and beaten us. They were 21-3 up at half time in that game in Atlanta, and they managed to cling on. We came back in the second half. So to go into Tbilisi, full stadium, and I must say the atmosphere was, I'll use the term hostile, but also very friendly. It's a hard mix. They're really nice people, but like AJ McGinty, who's starting 10, who I coached actually, back in Ireland, every time he'd kick, I mean, I can't tell you how loud the place got. And you had like armed guards around the stadium, and it was very, very noisy. It was a great atmosphere for those players as part of their development as well, to play in that sort of a venue. And we managed to have a kick to win it. So we lost the game 21 points to 20. So the fact that we're competitive is good. It just shows that we have so much potential there. Obviously, as an attack coach, I'm working with a management team where we all have a role to play. And Dave Hewitt was our head coach, who, again, played for New Zealand in a Rugby World Cup. But ironically, he coached in St. Michael's. He coached mini rugby in St. Michael's while he played at UCD. And I knew him a little bit. It's crazy. And he came in as an interim head coach. He's been working over with the Crusaders and with the New Zealand under-20s. He came in as an interim head coach and did a terrific job. So we had a coaching staff that all got on pretty well. We all worked together to try and give the players the best chance of winning. And I think the players responded really well to that. So it was a big learning experience. I do certain things differently. I think because it's the first time I've been in that environment, not that you're overly positive, but you have such a short window that you just want to get on with it and you want to keep everybody happy. So if you had a bit longer to be with the squad, you can maybe dissect things a little bit more and be a bit more critical. But it takes time to build relationships where you can actually be very critical about certain things. It's very hard to go in there and, you're there for one day, they hardly know you. You're trying to build an attacking structure and straight away being critical. It's hard to do that because you want the players to be in a comfortable position to perform on a Saturday. That's the most important thing. So I found it quite difficult, and that's just something that I'm going to have to review and work on, how you can get more of a critical element into that whole package. But I mean, from Sean Pittman was doing the forwards, he was brilliant. Dave Williams was doing the defense. He was great. And Dave Hodges. And, we just had a really good management team. And we took it seriously. We worked long hours, long days. And kind of whenever you tour, and you've been on tours yourself, I know you're starting out in the coaching ladder, very similar to myself. It's anticlimatical. I'm sitting here now and I'm looking back at it and it's an anticlimax. So the next stage will be the ARC, which is the America Rugby Championship that starts in January, and that's for 6 weeks. And, you just have to wait to see if that can work around, my personal life, or work around Yale, or even if USA want to have me. Those things have to be discussed, I suppose, over the next couple of weeks. But I mean, as an experience as a coach, to have done what I did is something that I'll always be really proud of. But looking back, there's always more that I could have done. And I suppose that's something that I struggle with the more I coach, is you look back and you get overly critical on yourself about how you can do things better. And I suppose that's what you're always striving towards, is to try and be a better person and a better coach. So I have a couple of work-ons that I'll have from the tour. And but all in all, it was amazing, just to be in that environment was great.
And I suppose the last question, please don't cry. I know it's an emotional time when it's the last question of the podcast, but would it be, well, I'll actually ask two questions to finish it off, because I don't want to leave any of the listeners a bit annoyed. So, would it be an ideal dream for you to continue and get asked to continue on with that USA role? And following on from that, what's Greg McWilliams' views of the future, whether that's short-term, long-term, medium-term?
I took a career break from St. Michael's, and that career break is up to 5 years. And I'm in the middle of my 4th year. So either way, I've got a pretty big decision to make next year as to whether the school will have me back. Hopefully they will. Or whether I decide to stay on here and, to pursue the program that we're trying to build at Yale, or in fact move somewhere else. I used to care much more about roles that came up and applying for roles. I don't anymore, because I think, certainly for me, it's about just focusing on trying to just do as good a job as I can and not think about too much down the line. As I said, I'll talk with USA this week, and we'll break down the tour, and timing comes into it. Remember, you're not a full-time staff member when you're with UCD, or I'd say UCD, when you're with USA. So it's very hard when you've got a full-time job outside of USA, because the ARC is a 7-week tour. You have the November internationals next week. You have the World Cup, which takes place over 2 months of your season. So it's a case of finding out, firstly, whether USA want to have me, and secondly, then whether it actually works for me to do that. But I mean, there's no doubt. I was just home there on my way back from the November tour. I was able to go out for family dinner with my mum, my dad, and my brothers and my sister and their other halves. And I mean, it was terrific. And you miss home and you miss your family. But at the same time, I mean, Yale is such a terrific place. It's so similar to Michaels and my Michaels experience. And it's going to be very hard to leave here.
I was going to say, do they have a groundskeeper who drives around in a tractor? While
They do. They do indeed. His name, ironically, is Tony.
That's surely. Is it actually?
No joke. Yeah, his name's Tony. His name's Tony. And may I add, smokes many cigarettes a day. So I think that's one of the things that has to happen when you're a groundsman is your name has to be Tony. And you have to enjoy cigarettes. But like the funny thing about Yale, by the way, is like people think, like I did, that Yale is $62,500 a year, and everybody who comes to Yale is incredibly wealthy. That's not the case. Yale is what's called a needs-blind university. So over 40% of students at Yale get pretty much full aid. So there's kids in my program who come from, economically very poor backgrounds, and their education is free at Yale. I think it's just something to put out there, that even Michael's students need to realize that there's every possibility, or anybody in Ireland, of coming over to Yale and playing rugby and getting a degree from Yale if they're smart enough. I mean, you'd need to get close to, certainly more than 575 points, I'd say, in your leaving. So it's academically very high. But I think the misperception is that everybody has to pay that much money to come to Yale. You don't. You pay actually what you can afford to pay. And that's like it. Yale has the second largest endowment, I think, certainly in America, of $24 billion. Second only, maybe it's more than that, but second to Harvard. And that endowment is there, so that they're able to allow people to come to Yale because they're good enough. So the way the application works is you apply for Yale, and if you get into Yale, you get into Yale. And then secondly, they see what you can afford to pay. And if you can afford to pay the whole whack, you pay the whole whack. If you can afford to pay bits of it, you pay bits of it. And if you can afford to pay none of it, you pay none of it. So I think, you get such a massive cultural divide here at Yale. And I honestly, I've learned more off the students at Yale than I've learned off most people. They teach you so much about, I mean, sometimes I get an email and I've got to put into Google Translate to see what some of the words mean. But it's made me more clinical with sending emails. I was never great at English. My spelling would have been pretty poor, even though I went into teaching. Spelling was never my strong point. But now it's had to become a good point, because, the players will come up to you and say, "Hey, coach, by the way, you spelled that incorrectly." I mean, I remember my first year, I was sending out information to do a cognitive test, which is a testing system that we brought in that players have to take before they play rugby. And I spelled cognitive wrong, ironically. So, you have players come up to you and they give you grief about it, but you have to be very aware of it as well. So, I can't even remember what the question was you asked me.
It was about your plans for the future. And you kind of you mentioned a good bit about it. And then you obviously gave us.
I mean, Richie Michaels is a brilliant place. I mean, I look at the people who I was lucky enough to have been coached rugby by and been taught in the classroom, and they were remarkable educators. They really were. I mean, at the time you question them because you're a teenager and you don't understand why somebody's giving out to you because you're not conforming. I mean, why is a teacher giving out to me? Yeah, I'm late for class, but I mean, being late's fine, right? I mean, you think everything is fine. It's only when you look back now at some of the teachers that I had, it's actually the teachers who were the hardest on me are the ones that I appreciate the most. And it's the teachers who were really easygoing and allowed me away with so much are the ones that you kind of, you might have respected them while you were in school, but now you look back and you respect them less. So I think I'm just lucky there's so many great, people who were there to mentor me, and so many other guys who have now gone on in different fields to do great things. And I just count my blessings that I was lucky enough to be there, and I was lucky enough to get the education that I did, and hopefully now that that's coming true in how I'm coaching and educating players at the moment. And as long as that continues, I think I'll be pretty happy.
Well said. Well, this is the kind of fun / banter part of the podcast where you get to let your hair down for a split second.
Hello.
First of all, what's your favorite TV series?
Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah, that's top.
Yeah, and The Office, the British Office, always got me through my teaching days.
And your days probably today as well.
And pretty much every day of my life is trying to be Ricky Gervais. Okay. Yeah.
And what is your greatest achievement as a coach thus far?
Obviously winning the SCT Cup as a coach in Michaels would be the greatest achievement so far.
Okay.
I think.
Who is your favorite golfer and why?
Brilliant question. Tom Watson, originally because he looked like Peter Shanley's dad, who was one of my best friends, but I love his golf swing, and I only talked to my brother Graham on yesterday, was it? 2 days ago? My head's everywhere. We were talking about Tom Watson, and we both hoped that he won the British Open there about 5 years ago, and he lost in the playoff. So Tom Watson, love how he swung the club.
This is going to be a very controversial one, but I'd love an answer if possible. Which place do you prefer, Ireland or United States?
Oh, Ireland. I mean, saying which one you prefer is tough. Ireland will always be my home. But I must say, I'm loving living in USA. People are great. And, no complaints living here. Very political answer.
Who was your favorite teacher going through school?
I had a teacher called Brian Mahoney, who was my 5th and 6th class teacher, who was really harsh on me, and I needed it. He was brilliant. He unfortunately passed away at a young age. But Noel Turley, certainly when I left school and I became a teacher myself, my wife Sarah became very friendly with him and Catherine, his wife, and Tom McCormick and Brona and David Carrigan. We used to go and meet for dinner quite a lot, and he guided me. And anything I did badly, which is very often, I'd contact Noel and he'd have an answer. So Noel Turley would have been the most important teacher I had in Michaels.
And last few coming up. So if you could get one person or guest on Rallan's Rant, who would it be?
I think it'd be interesting to hear what Ben Cleary would have to say. Obviously an Oscar winner and somebody who is just doing a phenomenal amount of work behind the screen. He'd be somebody that I'd say would be very interesting to talk to.
And what would you do if you had 15 minutes of fame?
What would I do? As in, like what would I perform?
You could perform.
What do you mean?
You'd probably have to perform something, I'd imagine. Or say something.
That's a toughie. I mean, people always say like that I'm performing every day, kind of I'm bluffing around the place. That's a tough question. I don't really know. I suppose maybe, I don't know, Richie. Like, how can I say anything without sounding like a complete tool?
The question. Just to probably throw me under the bus.
Oh, what would I do for 15 minutes? And try and keep it clean. I suppose play the guitar.
Do a few covers.
I mean, it's do a few covers, just give the people what they want. So you do the maths. Well,
and I'm taking the mic here with these questions, but how do you take your lattes?
Oh, Richie, you obviously seen that little hat. Yeah,
Yeah.
I take it pretty hot, Richie.
Too hot, some would
Damn
say?
hot. Yeah. Some might say too hot.
Okay.
Yeah. Some might say too hot. Ooh. Well.
Yes, banter at
Banter.
top level. And last but not least,
Top level.
sum yourself up in 3 words. This is always a tough one.
Don't take myself too seriously, I hope.
That's about 8.
Geez, this is actually. I was about to, okay, sorry. Hang on. Sum
In
myself
3
up
words if you
in
can.
3 words. Hardworking. I suppose ambitious. And fun,
Yeah.
maybe.
That's a decent 3, even though it's probably 4 words, I'd say, but I'll give you.
I thought I was gonna get harder questions. To be honest, I feel I got away with it pretty
Well,
pretty
I dunno.
easily there.
We'll let the listeners be the judge of that. But no, that's it for today anyway. So listen, Greg, I want to thank you for coming on and being the first guest of season 2. And, I speak on behalf of all the listeners, and I wish you all the best with, the next year and beyond that. And obviously we'll all be keeping an eye on Yale's whereabouts in the rugby world in USA. And, fingers crossed, you never know. We might see you back with the US national team. But no, I just want to thank you for coming on.
Thanks a million for having me on. And
Super. Okay, Greg, I'll leave you.